to be 2 capital G here, checking out the brand new CodeBreaker archetype that just got revealed coming out of Eternity Code. I believe that this could be the only link-based archetype in this entire set, and considering Eternity Code looks so good so far, especially for Legacy support and Master Rule 5, I gotta be honest guys, I'm so, we're at the very end of the Vrains era, we're in the last year, and I am so over link-based archetype, so my excitement for this archetype was not very high, and it seems like a very strange archetype. According to the anime, it's only going to have one main deck monster, and it doesn't seem to be an archetype where it's kind of like an Invoke deal or a Sky Striker where your main deck monster instantly goes into the link monsters. This archetype also revolves around giving your monsters to your opponent, and the monsters, the link ones anyways, need to be co-linked to activate their effects. It's really weird. It seems kind of like a clunky archetype. It might end up being a throwaway archetype, but it is an anime archetype. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the cards. The main deck monster is CodeBreaker 0 Day, and it's actually a pretty good card in my opinion. It's a level 4 Dark Warrior monster, so shoutouts to reinforcements of the army. It is 1800 attack and 0 defense. Your first effect says, a link monster that is link summoned with this card, except a Codebreaker link monster, loses 1000 attack. Second effect, if a Codebreaker link monster is destroyed by battle or card effect, while this card is already in the main monster zone, destroy this card. Third effect, if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can add one Codebreaker 0 Day from your deck to your hand. Okay, so off jump, I've always liked cards that float the fact that when this guy is destroyed pretty much by any means, I'm going to be able to search another copy of itself. Definitely is good. And essentially the way that this archetype is supposed to work, as I said earlier, you're supposed to give your opponent your Codebreaker monsters. So I think what Konami wants you to do is essentially give this card to your opponent, then run it over and then just search another copy of itself. That feels a little archaic to me, but I guess it is some sort of playstyle that they're going to be pushing. I also think that that first effect kind of ties in. If you give this card to your opponent and they somehow can protect it and they end up using it for link fodder, then at least their monster is kind of debuffed. Its attack value is not nearly as high. The second effect's kind of weird. I'm not exactly sure how they want you to use that. If it's in the main monster zone and one of your link monsters dies, then this card also just dies randomly. I'm not really sure. I can't really wrap my head around how that second effect is supposed to be used to your advantage. I'm not exactly clear on that. Anyways, let's go ahead and check out their link to monster. This is CodeBreaker Virus Swordsman. It's a link to Dark Warrior monster. Its link points are identical to Salamangreat Sunlight Wolves. They point up towards your opponent, then down towards you. Since this archetype is all about giving your opponent your Codebreaker monsters, all of their link monsters also point to your opponent. They all have upward pointing arrows. Now this guy is actually generic. It just requires 2 effect monsters, and both of your effects are hard once per turn. First effect says, when this card is special summoned and it is co-linked, you can special summon one Codebreaker 0 Day from your hand, deck, or graveyard to a zone a link monster points to either side of the field. Second effect, during the end phase, if this card in its owner's possession was destroyed by an opponent's card and is sent to the graveyard, you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. Okay, so this link to monster also has a floating effect, and it's a pretty good one, I'm not gonna lie. Essentially, if your opponent destroys this card in any way, or if they just run it over in battle, this card will just monster reborn itself during the end phase. A really cool thing that I do like about this card is the fact that it doesn't actually have to be link summoned and co-linked at the time of link summon to activate its effect. It just has to be special summoned. So if your opponent runs it over, theoretically you can activate the first effect when this card monster reborns itself during the end phase, as long as it's link summoned and you didn't use the first effect earlier in that turn. I think the first effect where you're summoning your 0 Day from your deck or your graveyard, I think it's going to be easier to just summon it to your opponent's side of the field, because I thought about with the link points that this card has up and down, how exactly would you co-link this thing and then also summon it, summon a monster to its link point? It just doesn't really seem like it's possible, to be honest, with the link points that this card has. So a lot of times I assume You're going to be summoning to your opponent's side of the field. You're going to be trying to run over your own copy of 0 Day and then searching the other copy. It would have been nicer if maybe this card didn't point straight down. If it pointed to like the bottom left or bottom right, it would make link climbing into a 3 a lot easier, because this archetype does have a link 3, which is what we're going to talk about right now. The link 3 monster is CodeBreaker Virus Berserker. I believe Konami had already revealed this card when they laid out the blueprints, or kind of like the roadmap of every of the Yu-Gi-Oh packs that were going to be released in 2020, but they didn't really give us any more information about the archetype, so I didn't cover this card at that time. This is a link 3 Dark Warrior monster, 2800 attack, so definitely good stats. Its link points are top, right, and then point straight down towards you. Its materials are 2+ monsters, including a CodeBreaker monster, so you have to have at least one CodeBreaker, unlike the link 2. Your first and second effects are both hard once per turn. First effect says, when this card is special summoned, and it is co-linked, you can special summon up to 2 CodeBreaker monsters from your hand or graveyard to a zone a link monster points to on either side of the field. Second effect, during your main phase, you can destroy a number of spell/trap cards your opponent controls up to the number of link CodeBreaker monsters your opponent controls. So that was when I first saw this card, I was like, whoa, how the hell is this archetype supposed to work? But we now know that essentially you're just supposed to summon your CodeBreakers to your opponent's side of the field, and this card does have a double monster reborn. I kind of like this card's kind of interesting, because when you summon it and it is co-linked, you can, I guess, probably summon the link 2 and then like the 0 Day back from your graveyard. You probably want to summon 0 Day to your opponent's side of the field, and then you want to summon your link 2, the Virus Swordsman, to your field, run over the 0 Day, and then search another copy of 0 Day. Also at that time, well, I guess before you enter the battle phase, during the main phase, you can pop one of your opponent's spells and traps, and that seems pretty nice. I don't love the fact that like it works, the spell and trap destruction effect exclusively works based on how many CodeBreaker monsters your opponent controls, and it seems like it's probably just going to be capped out at like 1. I mean, getting more than 1 on your opponent's side of the field seems painfully difficult, as basically all of the cards in this archetype seem to be. It seemed like an interesting concept, but I'm not gonna lie, this feels very archaic to me. Like, this kind of feels like it should have been released in, like, I don't know, the first couple of booster sets from the Vrains era. Like, this kind of feels like it should have been in maybe Code of the Duelist or Circuit Breaker, something, because I look at the playstyle and I'm like, all right, I'm giving my opponent my main deck monster, I'm trying to run it over and then search another copy of itself. It kind of feels like old school Yu-Gi-Oh, like late DM era, maybe early GX, when we were playing like Creature Swap with Mystic Tomato, and it just feels kind of slow and clunky in my opinion. But what do you guys think of the CodeBreakers? Again, according to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains anime, they're only going to have one main deck monster, so I don't know exactly how easily it is going to be to link climb with this deck, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Anyways, whatever you guys think, leave it in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on the notification bell for daily videos. And actually, I lied. There is one more card that I want to talk about, and it's because it's kind of like a generic link card, and it's not really part of a theme, so I feel like I can kind of throw it in at the end of this video. Some of the other cards, like the Salaman Great random card that they revealed, same thing with Marin says, it's like, whatever. Anyways, this is a normal spell card called Link Burst. It's a hard once per turn. It says target one link monster you control and one monster your opponent controls. That is the cost. Destroy them, then draw one card. Okay, so just like the CodeBreaker archetype, this card to me feels like it really should have been released at the beginning of the Vrains era, not at the absolute end. This feels like it could have been very useful for a multitude of archetypes, especially if your archetype has protection for your link monster. And I'm just trying to interpret this card because it doesn't say and if you do. I assume, for instance, if you were going to target your own Salaman Great Link and you protected it with Banelinks, I believe that you would still draw a card. I don't think that you have to destroy both targets to actually draw a card. It doesn't say and if you do destroy destroy them, draw a card. It just says, you know, targeting them is the cost. Anyways, I believe that this could actively be used in some of like the Cybers decks. And when I say Cybers decks, I don't mean like Marincess or like Salamangreat. I think that those archetypes already have their own kind of theme cards that are a little better. I just mean the deck that I call Shitty Cybers Extra Link, where they're just kind of link summoning to link summon. Their win condition was, generally speaking, kind of extra linking, but we know in Master Rule 5, extra linking won't matter really for the most part. So I feel like being able to take one of those extra or one of those link monsters that necessarily isn't all that good and being able to convert it into removal, and the fact that you get the draw as well, like that could be pretty useful. But I feel like this card is just honestly way too late. Now, if it was a quick play spell, then it would be like kind of nuts, because you could just give up your worst link monster and disrupt your opponent, also draw a card. But to me, this card is just a little too late to the party. I feel like Konami should have given this or given this card in one of the first couple of Yu-Gi-Oh sets.